Monday takeaways, midseason roster battles, and some stats.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien, the host of the only 5 times a week Cincinnati Bengals podcast. We've got you covered from the day of the game through Friday with a post-game show all the way to a game preview tomorrow. For those of you that are new to the show, we're joined by Bengals fans Mike Santagata for our weekly film takeaways segment. And then on Wednesday, Thursday, we've got our crossover episode. So a lot going on this week as the Bengals prepare to take on the Ravens. But before we shift gears and start thinking about the Ravens, James, and after our viewers on YouTube click that subscribe button, we're going to take one last little moment before the all 22 takeaways tomorrow to reflect on the Detroit game and some of the takeaways we've got coming out of the Bengals' most thorough victory of the season. Then we're going to talk about some roster battles later on in the show, and I've got some stats that we can look at that I found to be pretty interesting as we're 6 games into the season. But James, let's start with those takeaways, and I'm going to go straight to you. Coming out of this game, what are the biggest takeaways you've got for the 4-2 Bengals?
It's crazy because it's a crappy Lions team. It's a bad offense. It's Jared Goff and people talking about, is he going to be benched or not? And awful receivers where honestly, I feel like I'm one Built Bar away from making the Detroit Lions, at least the practice squad, baby, as a slot receiver. But this isn't a podcast about me and my crazy confidence. It's about the Bengals. And I think that the fact that they've been so damn consistent on defense, 6 straight weeks, it's insane to think about that they're where they are. I still think they need another edge rusher before the deadline if they can get one. I think they know they need another edge rusher. And I can say all of these things, and yet it's still going to be the same narrative that they got to go prove it this week against Lamar Jackson, a guy that's torched them. But yeah, I think the Bengals are making me a believer. That this defense is making me a believer. And I was really skeptical, even a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, but they just continued to do enough to keep the Bengals either in the game or put them in position to win the game, or like they did on Sunday, they were just so damn dominant that 7-0 felt like it wasn't even a 1-possession game. It felt like a 3-possession game in the first half, even though the Bengals offense was struggling.
The first half, when, as we discussed on yesterday's post-game show, the Lions averaged 1.8 yards per play. Now, worth noting, the Bengals haven't gone against any of the crazy good offenses in the NFL yet. The best offense they've faced, probably Minnesota, but in week 1, I don't know if that even counts. There's also an argument to be made for Green Bay, but when they played the Packers, with some of the injuries the Packers have had on the offensive line, they're really compensating for their guys that are missing. And so that was a pretty modified version of the Green Bay Packers offense I think the Bengals got last week. And Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, and AJ Dillon, they all certainly...
AJ, yep.
Yeah, I don't know why I struggle with that one. They all certainly got theirs for the Packers. So that's what makes this week exciting, as you talked about, James. And it reminds me of something Zach Taylor said in his press conference on Monday when he's like, yeah, I feel like every week you guys ask, is this a measuring stick game? This one to me feels, and I guess to some extent, every game in the NFL is, right? Like against Detroit, it was, if you don't blow this team out, the measuring stick that I put out into the world was, if you don't blow this team out, well, you're probably not a good football team. You might be an okay football team, but you're probably not a good football team. Now, blowing them out doesn't prove that you're a good football team. But I think if you don't do what they did, then I'm less convinced, right? And so the Bengals, they lived up to my lofty expectations. A bunch of people on Twitter got after me, got in my mentions, said famous last words when I tweeted. The first tweet of my day yesterday, James, was, you guys ready for a nice, relaxing Bengals game? And people weren't very happy with me. They thought I jinxed something, but I clearly don't believe in jinxes. But All of that being said, every game is a measuring stick in its own way, and this one is a measuring stick on both sides of the ball. For Joe Burrow, how do you bounce back against Wink Martindale, who just confused the hell out of Justin Herbert and made him play maybe the worst game of his pro career so far, and certainly was responsible for Joe Burrow's worst or one of the worst games he's played as an NFL quarterback so far. Burrow this year, while there are some interception concerns, has been very consistent. So he gets a chance to go against that Ravens defense again. And on the other hand, for the Bengals defense, have all these pieces they brought in to compete in their division, as Zach Taylor said, to stop Lamar Jackson, to contain running games. Are they going to pay off? So on the one hand, I get why Zach Taylor's sick of hearing, how is this a measuring stick game this week? But it's very clear to articulate what lessons we might learn as we look ahead to the Ravens.
For sure. And that's the downside, if there's a downside to pummeling the Lions, is I think on Sunday night, people are already looking ahead to the Ravens. Fans had almost turned the page to a degree. And the Bengals, obviously, they have to do that every week. But I think the lingering effects of losing to Green Bay, people didn't turn the page necessarily. And they were looking at all the different ways Zach could have changed things, or, a player could have made a field goal, right? Or whatever the changes or things that could have happened for them to win the game. But as far as takeaways on Sunday, and this kind of ties into, if they're going to beat the Ravens, this offense goes as Jamar Chase goes, which is so weird. It's really weird. And it's not necessarily a negative. It just seems like anytime they're hitting their stride, it's because Chase has made a big play each and every week. And I don't know if that's sustainable against the Ravens. I guess we'll see. I don't know if that's sustainable against insert whatever playoff team the Bengals hope to compete with. And that's kind of one of my takeaways is, look, the Bengals through 6 weeks, Jamar Chase to me has been, PFF grades aside or whatever grades you want to look at, or Football Outsiders this or that, he's been their offense. He's been the guy that's, made game-changing plays. And so when I look at it that way, I still think the verdict is out on the play calling, on Zach Taylor, in this offense as a whole, especially when you have, like you said, Don Wink Martindale looming, and a defense that has certainly had Zach Taylor's offense's number. I mean, Zach has never beaten the Ravens, hasn't come close to beating the Ravens. And now he's got to deal with them on the road after they've, completely pummeled Justin Herbert, like you said.
Yeah, and Wink Martindale has a habit of doing that the first time he faces young quarterbacks in particular, and that was Justin Herbert's disadvantage. Joe Burrow, as Zach Taylor points out, has seen what Wink Martindale likes to do against him specifically. And so you hope that his maturation process as a quarterback, his continued learning as an NFL quarterback, the more exposure, the more reps he has, pays some dividends here. But you can leave it to this Baltimore defense to try to confuse you. It is worth noting, I know you said you don't care about Football Outsiders numbers, but I've got them for you anyway, James. Baltimore's defense ranks 22nd in Football Outsiders DVOA so far this season. And just for reference, the Bengals in weighted DVOA so far this season are 7th. Now, I don't think this actually includes the Lions game. I don't think this includes week 6 yet, because week 6 is not updated yet. Yeah, this was updated 5 days ago. So this does not include the most recent week. So Baltimore is going to go up, probably way up, because of what they did to a very highly rated offense in the Chargers. Cincinnati should probably go up a little bit, but they went against one of the worst offenses in the NFL, the Detroit Lions offense, ranking 25th in Football Outsiders metrics. So, yeah, we'll see, right? We'll see how this team does. This is, the second biggest, the first biggest test of the season, depending on how you see the Packers. I think the Packers are probably pretty good. I think the Ravens are certainly coming off a big win, going to be a big test for this team on the road. So, looking forward to that. We'll get more into that matchup starting on Wednesday night, on Thursday with the crossover. Then we'll have a game preview show later in the week. Before that, we've got some roster battles that have kicked up mid-season, and we'll get into those next.
Today's episode of Locked On Bengals is brought to you by McDonald's. That's right, Chad Johnson's McDonald's, his favorite restaurant, the proudly serving community since 1965. And of course, they've always been the tasty, affordable place to get awesome food where you can get awesome fries, you can get awesome cheeseburgers. Maybe you need a salad. And the best part about it, you can meet up with it for a study group or knowing that they have dependable Wi-Fi, or maybe it's the morning where you need your cup of joe. Well, McDonald's has got you covered. So check them out now. Wherever your local McDonald's is, they're everywhere. I had McDonald's on my way back from Detroit. It was the perfect post-game meal to fuel me, as not only did I record Locked On Bengals, but I wrote about 52 articles covering the game. So head to your local McDonald's to refuel and reconnect. And did someone say a Locked On Bengals watch party? Make sure you check them out. And as always, ba-da-ba-ba-ba, I'm loving it.
Wow. They should hire you to do their national ads with that voice.
I was ready. I almost put a little jig in it, man. I almost threw a little, but that's for the beginning of the episode is when I dance. You
haven't belted out notes on this show for quite a while. Let's not open that can of worms. I mean, that was good. You nailed it. Let's talk about some of these little roster battles, let's say, and we'll start with Chris Evans, I think, James. We're also going to talk a little bit about Trey Hill, Jackson Carman, what's going on at that right guard spot. Trey Hill, I think, is going to be remembered in this game by most fans for his start and not his finish, which may not be fair to Trey Hill. So we'll talk about that one. But let's start with Chris Evans. Everybody knows he had a fantastic game. He was a hot topic of conversation in Bengals press conferences on Monday. He spoke to the media himself, and maybe we'll start there. He shared a really cool story about how he has been to Ford Field before. Obviously, he played his football at the University of Michigan, but he wasn't there as a player the last time he was there, which made this trip a little bit more significant. So let's hear what he had to say in his press conference today.
Definitely a lot of significance, because as I was thinking about it coming to the stadium in 2019, when I got suspended from the school, my youth organization, we worked the security at the front at the Lions game or at Ford Field to like check people in and give people like stuff at the thing. And in 2019, when the Lions played the Giants, I was there at that game doing security, because I wasn't in school, I wasn't in football, nothing. So the last time I was at that stadium, I was helping with safe security and had a polo on and stuff. And then I got to watch the game after everybody got in. So just that moment for me, just going out there, having that day, that the next time that I'm at that stadium it felt good for me.
When you were working security at that Lions-Giants game, were you thinking, I'm going to get out there someday as a player? Or were you thinking, it sucks. What am I doing here? What was going through your mind in that situation?
I'm not going to lie, I had no idea, because the situation, I had to, in order to get to the NFL, I had to play one more year of college and then go through the process. So I was kind of I was in the moment, just watching and just like, I'm saying, that's my goal. And I just got to keep pushing and just hopefully someday it'll happen. But I know that if I just keep my head down and work and keep grinding and just stay away from the outside noise, that it'll all come true.
Pretty cool stuff. Yeah,
it is.
I mean, coming from where he was suspended back to score a touchdown, that's pretty cool.
It's cool, and it's crazy because in 2019, it wasn't like he was out there like, oh, I should be in there playing. Right? Like, that's why I think Dan Hort asked that question. It was a good question. And it was like, he had no idea what his future was going to be in 2019. That's not that long ago, right? And he didn't play much at Michigan last year because Jim Harbaugh must not like winning, because there's no way he couldn't have used Chris Evans on the field. But that's subject for another time. And then Evans comes in here and, man, he talks in that, and I'm not mocking him, this monotone. Like, I wonder if he's like that on the field, where he's just like, yeah, I just like, and he's insightful, right? He talked about Joe Mixon on draft day, and it's not like he doesn't offer cool stories, but it just seems like he's so even keeled. And I think you would have to be to go through the process and make it through the NFL, or make it to the NFL like he has, and now have success as a rookie, a 6th round rookie, that honestly on draft night, if someone would have said, he might not make the team, I think at least 50% of people would have said, yeah, that's not that shocking with who they have in that running back room. Not only has he made the team, but as we get into the, the position battles, Jake, do you think he should be RB2? Because I do.
I think he's made a compelling case to be at least 2A if Samaje Perine is 2B. Like at least split those snaps, right? Now there's a very clear preference, I think, that this team has shown to lean on Joe Mixon when Joe Mixon is healthy. And we'll talk about that a little bit, I think, in the stats segment coming up in a few minutes here. Just the trends when Joe Mixon is healthy, the Bengals are running the ball way more, as you would expect. But that also tells you that they highly value Joe Mixon, as they should. He's having a fantastic year. In most ways, he's been very, very good. Now, that being said, Chris Evans, we talked about yesterday, his block on the Jamar Chase deep post, like the 50-yard bomb, was an instrumental block in picking up a blitz, probably the best pass pro rep from a Bengals running back this year, which isn't necessarily saying much, but it was really good. So don't let that take anything away from it. He caught the touchdown. Zach Taylor praised his receiving skills, his route running skills, and obviously an area to work on for him in the preseason was how well does he run the ball, and that was always a question. How does he beat out Travion Williams and Jaquez Patrick, who both ran the ball, at times in the last couple of years pretty well, and he had some issues with it in the preseason, but his talent elsewhere was so undeniable that he ends up making the team over those guys, and he's continued to improve. And he grinded out the film on those Giovanni Bernard pass blocking highlights, according to him, as assignment from Zach Taylor, and is taking some strides there as well. So great story there. And in addition to great story, I agree with you, James. I think he's earned more reps.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is how do they balance it with Mixon? Because Mixon should get in there and be that guy that they're paying him to be, and he showed that too on Sunday. So that balance as the season goes on is going to be interesting for sure. Other position battles that are interesting in special teams isn't always a topic on this show, because it's not the sexy thing to talk about necessarily, but the punt returner job. I'm going to give you a take, Jake. I'll give you a take, because we saw Trenton Irwin yesterday for the first time, and he fair caught a punt on the 5. Darius Phillips runs backwards more than he runs forwards on punt returns this year. I don't know why. He used to be a good punt returner. I don't know what happened to him, but he can't do it anymore. And so he got replaced in his hometown, which is kind of cold, but it is what it is when you struggle like he has. I think Trent Taylor's the best punt returner on this team. I think if they need a reliable punt returner, he can do it. And I don't think he's going to get the opportunity necessarily this week in Baltimore, but I wouldn't be shocked if he does soon if Irwin struggles, because Phillips, I don't really know where his value is, especially if he's not their fourth cornerback anyways. So it's an interesting, I think it's almost a trio battle, not a duo battle, even though most people are focused on Irwin and Phillips.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I really don't understand what's happened to Darius Phillips. He's regressed, I think, as a corner. He's not playing very well as a returner. I think they're all being coached to fair catch at the 5-yard line. I mean, they're all doing it. This has been a problem for Bengals returners for a long time, not catching the ball when it's in front of them and fair catching the ball at their own 5. So I don't know about that, but I could certainly see Chris Evans getting some looks there as well. I know he was in camp, so might as well put that athleticism to the test. And the last one to talk about is I think Trey Hill, Jackson Carman with his best PFF grade of his life, 90 run blocking grade, including one really impressive pancake block on a big Joe Mixon run. It was violent before he vomited and left the game. Trey Hill then came back into the game, and Trey Hill, really awful start to the game. Holding penalty into false start penalty, single-handedly torpedoes a drive, finishes the game with a 65 grade overall. That's not bad. I think it's actually better than Trey Hopkins' grade for the game, and he played a little bit of center to finish up on the last couple of drives when Trey couldn't go on. Good debut for him ultimately, despite the early struggles, and just worth noting that the game did go on and he had some good reps later. I don't think this is a battle yet, but Trey Hill is currently the backup right guard because there's nobody else, and so that's why I bring it up.
Yeah, it's not a battle yet, but he's clearly the number 2 center, obviously, and then the number 2 right guard, like you mentioned. And so we could see him sooner rather than later, barring, something, if something crazy does happen. And Carmen, I don't think it's completely locked in. I think they did want to get a look at Trey Hill, and Carmen could have started on Sunday if they needed him to. And it was like, this is kind of a chance for us to look at Hill. And he got off to a slow start, and Carmen played well. And I think Carmen will start this week in Baltimore. But if they have to go with Hill for any reason, I don't think they're going to press panic, which says a lot about him.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about those matchups in the coming days because the interior, Calais Campbell in particular, having a great year. But we have some stats to talk about, and James, I have a wild card topic for you coming up next.
In life, we're all bound for different things. With beachbound.com, you're bound for vacations. You could be bound for adventure, bound for passion, bound for discovery, or bound for togetherness. Or maybe you could be bound for encountering the unexpected. Look, when I'm at a beach resort, I kick back, I throw my feet up. I have a frou-frou drink that tastes just as good as it looks. And yeah, it's got some alcohol in it. And cheers. And with beachbound.com, you can have the perfect beach vacation for you, no matter what you're looking for. So what are you bound for? Visit beachbound.com today.
Maybe you're bound for a road trip, and if that's your style, make sure your car's in shape with our friends at rockauto.com. They've got you covered no matter what you drive, if it's James's Daewoo or James's other car, the reliable Toyota. Don't spend 30, 50, 100% more at a chain store or at the car dealership. Save money, save time with rockauto.com. You can do the shopping from the comfort of your own home. You can trust the family business that's been serving do-it-yourselfers like you for over 20 years. That's a ton of experience, a great, easy-to-use website from brake parts to new carpet. They've got anything that your vehicle might need. Go to rockauto.com, see all the parts available for your car or truck, and when you check out, write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. All right, James, you ready for a wild card topic that I didn't prepare you for at all?
Yeah, let's go. What do you got?
Whitney Merciless has been released or is going to be released. He might be subject to waivers. He might be subject to some trade talk first. He is
no waivers. He's a veteran, so no waivers. I don't think.
No waivers. 31 years old and hasn't been great for a few years. Was last really good according to PFF grading in 2017, but has been okay. An average edge player for the most part, if you ignore 2020 when he wasn't so good. Again, according to PFF grading. And again, in that year, Houston's defense, a bit of a disaster. So, Whitney Merciless, does he intrigue you at all as a potential supplementary edge option for this team? And we've talked about the potential of Dark Horse acquiring an edge player at the trade deadline.
Yes, sign me up. And I was talking to someone today, and like I said at the top, I think the Bengals are interested in edge. They know, despite the deal about Sam Hubbard, that he's not this dude that's going to be this edge, monster, a pass rusher. And so you have Trey Hendrickson and no Joseph Osai. You're not expecting that from Hubbard. Some are saying Darius Hodge. Clearly, they don't feel the same way, and I get why they don't. You're going to have to add somebody. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting, especially if he hits the market. Because if he hits the market, then the Bengals can negotiate with, they can go that route. I don't think they would. I'd have to look at his contract. Obviously, you threw this at me. I don't know if they would claim him necessarily or trade for him. Or they, like I said, there's no waivers, so they can't claim him. I don't know if they would necessarily trade for him. I'd have to look at his contract.
Yeah, that's fair. I also don't know what his contract is. I would kick the tires. I'd certainly kick the tires just to find out, right? Because he may not be the player that he once was, but he could be some quality depth. He could be a little bit better maybe than what they've got. And so, in my opinion, it could be worth a look. And maybe part of that look is just doing your due diligence and turning on the tape and seeing what he's got left in the tank. What, you got that contract, or should I talk about the other wild card topic that
He
I just stumbled upon?
he has an out after this year, but no, there's a couple dead money years, and yeah, so I don't think any team is trading for him. I think he's going to have to get released
The
because
dead money stuff would be stuck with the Texans because
would it?
it's already
Okay,
been paid. So it would be like whatever the remaining salary is probably what the acquiring team would be on the hook for. Probably.
gotcha. Oh, okay, well then, I mean, so the base salary for this year's 4.5 million.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So you're 6 games in. So yeah, maybe if that's it, yeah, because there's 7 million in dead cap if they released him at the end of the year. So
And that's probably
again, like you
signing
said,
bonus stuff that would stay with the Texans. I don't know. I'm not looking at the contract, but that's often what it is. Yeah, something to think about. If it is a trade, it wouldn't be for more than like a 7th round pick, probably. I don't think that he's going to command very much. He's been on a bit of a decline. But the other one, James, real quick, PFF, there's some AFC trades out there. How about backup?
Real quick, it looks like he was like officially released.
Has he actually been released? Like it's on the transaction wire?
Rappaport said he was released, so we'll see. But
Because
they have released veteran pass rusher.
Released.
Yeah, so it's not like they plan on releasing.
Because I'm just thinking back to the Stephon Gilmore report.
No
that
doubt.
was like
Yep.
they've released, or I don't remember how exactly it was phrased. So okay, maybe he's just a free agent. The other one is backup center Ted Karras from the New England Patriots as a potential trade target. Some people have asked. I don't know much about Ted Karras. He's buried on the depth chart behind David Andrews, who's maybe a Pro Bowler, certainly very good. But Ted Karras could potentially be a center trade target for a team that isn't so sure about Trey Hopkins right now as he continues to battle the knee. Those are my 2 wild card topics. Real quick, James, let's get to some stats before we get out of here. Because I looked at some stats today. The first is just a Jamar Chase deep leading the league in everything conversation.
He's the best. Sorry, go ahead.
You know what? Penei Sewell was actually the top graded Lions offensive player for everybody talking a bunch of smack about
Jamar Chase was the best offensive player on the field.
I don't disagree. Jamar Chase is very good and was the correct pick. I'm just saying, like, people are saying that Penei Sewell had a bad game. I think he gave up like 1 early pressure or two early pressures maybe to Trey Hendrickson. Besides the case, Jamar Chase now leads the NFL in deep receiving yards by about 60. Henry Ruggs catching up a little bit in that category this week, is PFF's highest graded player on deep targets at 99.9, barely edging out Tyler Lockett's 99.8. As you might imagine, deep receiving coincides with really high grades. These tend to be explosive plays, but Jamar Chase leading the league not only in deep yardage and I think deep touchdowns, but also deep receiving grade according to PFF. So just your weekly Jamar Chase is really, really good at the deep ball update that may become a staple on this show because he does it every week.
I'd like to make an announcement. Since Jake threw me a couple curveballs, I'm going to throw him a curveball right now.
Okay.
Even if he says no, it's happening, Locked On Bengals listeners. If Jamar Chase roasts Marlon Humphrey this week in Baltimore and beats him and goes for a touchdown and goes for 100+ yards, Jake and I are both doing the gritty on the post-game show. You heard it here first. They got to win the game, of course. We're not going to do the gritty if they lose. But if they win, Jamar goes for 100+ against Marlon Humphrey and company. Jake Liscow, James Rapien, going to do the gritty on YouTube for the post-game show. Just be ready for that.
James cannot make any promises on my behalf.
I just
the
did.
Disclaimer. You
Yeah,
tried.
baby.
Another stat to get the people here is third down passes that go for a first down. In the AFC, Patrick Mahomes, we talked about before we started recording, and the Chiefs are ridiculous on third downs, converting 60% of their third downs. That's insane. The Bengals have had their issues on third downs, but Joe Burrow, when he does pass on third downs, has the second highest rate in the AFC behind only Patrick Mahomes at converting third downs converting 49% of the passes he throws on third downs for first down conversions. That's ahead of Justin Herbert by a couple tenths of a percent, 2.5% better than Allen in Buffalo, and much better than Lamar Jackson, who's at 40%, Baker Mayfield at 36%. So Joe Burrow, very efficient in converting third downs. And I thought that was worth pointing out. I thought that was some good Joe Burrow, good content.
Yeah, and they're going to really need that against the Ravens, right? Is because this is, and we'll dive into it this week. There's a lot, but this offense can't be like it was in the first half if they expect to leave Baltimore with a win. And that starts with Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow, obviously. So you need good Joe. And not really good Joe. You need great Joe, because I think he was good on Sunday against the Lions. But you need great Joe against the Ravens, which includes third down. So that is encouraging.
Burrow now, I believe, is PFF's sixth highest graded quarterback on the season. And in several other categories, I've got some high ranks for Joe Burrow.
Smoking Joe.
In adjusted yards per attempt, which is a pretty good predictive stat for how good a quarterback is, Joe Burrow last year was like in the mid sixes, and this year I think is 8.9 adjusted yards per attempt. That's a huge improvement. That's good for seventh in the NFL. There's also net adjusted yards per attempt, which includes sacks. Joe Burrow ranks lower in that category. I think taking some sacks that he shouldn't be, just to throw some nuance out there. And there's a good example in the red zone last week that didn't end up really coming back to bite the Bengals in the butt, but you can't take that sack in that situation, I think, and I think he'll learn. And a couple PFF rankings here. Fifth in big time throw percentage. That's really good. 6.6% of his throws are big time throws. That's really good. Unfortunately, he has the eighth highest turnover worthy pass percentage. Now, this is a very similar profile to Josh Allen in terms of putting the ball in danger sometimes, but also making a lot of big time throws. And he's also sixth in adjusted completion percentage at 79.4%. So a lot of really good things there. And one takeaway, which is got to take care of the football a little bit better. Got to make some better decisions throwing the ball away to avoid some sacks. And you clean those things up. Joe Burrow on his way to a clear top 10 year in many statistical categories.
Hopefully he does clean them up starting Sunday, because again, those numbers are going to dip if he takes big sacks in the red zone and has a couple turnovers. So Chris Evans was able to bail him out in the red zone in Detroit after that sack. It's not really going to happen against this Ravens defense. So that's the beauty of that blowout win, right? Is there's a lot of good, some stuff they can work on, and hopefully they can clean it up ahead of Sunday's game against Baltimore.
Monday always reveals the truth to these teams in their film review sessions. Last one before we get out of here, James.
Go ahead.
That
you're going to be doing on Sunday. Get ready.
Joe Burrow completing 70% of his passes this year is on pace this year in a 16-game schedule, which obviously it is not. So if it was still a 16-game schedule, on schedule for 4,100 passing yards, 37 touchdowns, but those 19 interceptions. And that's why I say that is something that we'll be watching, that'll need to get cleaned up. But I have a lot of confidence in Joe Burrow. I think he's still playing really well despite the interceptions, and I think that'll go in the right direction. Tomorrow we're joined by Bengals Sans Mike Santagata for our film takeaways, all 22, as we get our eyes on that tonight. Until then, Bengals fans, hoo day, and have a good one.